in the media, and of course in Blake Lively's mind and in her lawsuit. There were a lot of headlines that are really misleading in this case, how they're twisting these new text messages as bombshells to prove there was a smear campaign.
Hollywood thrives on glamour, but lately it feels like the shine has completely rubbed off Blake Lively's story. What began as a lawsuit she hoped would prove she was the victim of a smear campaign has instead turned into a messy public spectacle. Blake walked into her deposition with confidence, but what came out shocked observers. Contradictions, vague answers, and entire moments where she seemed completely out of touch with her own claims. Instead of pointing to clear evidence, she stumbled, leaving even her supporters uneasy.
I don't read news about me or go on social media about me. So personally, I don't have knowledge. No. Okay, says the attorney, and that's as of today. And going backward in time, can you identify any written thing that you believe Mr. Wallace published about you that is defamatory, disparaging, in any way offending to you? Then attorney Hudson says, objection! But then Blake Lively answers it anyway, and she says, a specific article or no? I don't know a specific article.
What makes this even juicier is the timing. While Blake was struggling through her testimony, her personal life took another hit in the headlines. Taylor Swift, the one-time best friend who used to call Blake her sister, announced her fairy tale engagement to Travis Kelce. The internet lit up with congratulatory messages, but one voice was missing: Blake's. She didn't even like the post.
And as expected, Blake Lively did not congratulate her ex-BFF Taylor Swift. She didn't even like the post.
For fans who watched their friendship fall apart in slow motion, this silence was louder than words. So now, Blake finds herself trapped in a double storm. A courtroom battle that could destroy her credibility, and a friendship fallout that leaves her out of Hollywood's brightest spotlight. The real fireworks began when a judge decided to unseal Blake Lively's deposition. That move alone signaled something big. The judge believed the testimony could influence the outcome of her lawsuit. At the heart of the case is Jed Wallace, a figure Blake accused of orchestrating a campaign to ruin her image. Wallace had already been dismissed from the case once, but Blake pulled him back in, insisting he played a role in the so-called smear. The unsealed deposition, however, painted a very different picture. Instead of catching Wallace in the act, the transcript revealed Blake stumbling through questions and failing to produce proof.
Continues to answer anyways, and she says, I can't cite a specific article. My understanding from the documents I received is that he was a part of this campaign which contained a lot of content. But to be able to name one specific article, if that's what you're asking, no.
At times, her memory seemed fuzzy. At other times, she looked unsure of her own claims. But that's not all. Wallace wasn't even the only name swirling around this mess. Justin Baldoni's defense hinged on the argument that he was simply protecting his reputation, while Blake's narrative suggested a sinister plot against her. With the testimony now public, viewers were able to judge for themselves. And many walked away thinking Blake might have been her own worst enemy. The stage was set, but things were about to get even more complicated.
Well, now we have got some more evidence, you guys, from Justin Baldoni's team, because the judge just agreed to unseal more of Blake Lively's deposition. So more of her sworn statement is now public.
If Blake Lively's case was ever going to be solid, her testimony was supposed to provide the proof. Instead, it did the opposite. When pressed by Wallace's attorney to identify any article, post, or document that he had authored which defamed her, Blake came up empty. She admitted she didn't follow press coverage about herself and couldn't recall a single specific example. Even more damaging, she seemed to forget details about her own film. Asked about production timelines, filming locations, and even the premiere date of It Ends With Us, Blake gave vague answers or simply said she didn't know. For someone who was both the star and a credited producer, her lack of recall shocked the courtroom. It gets even worse. Her lawyers tried to jump in, objecting to nearly every question. But Blake often ignored them and answered anyway, sometimes digging herself into deeper contradictions. What was supposed to be her chance to look strong under oath turned into a string of forgetful shrugs. Observers whispered that the deposition didn't just weaken her case, it embarrassed her as both an actress and producer. And this wasn't even the most shocking part of her testimony.
Who she reposted on her story for saying happy birthday to her are people that make money of Blake Lively. They're all business associates with her. So they're all like hairstylists and nail designers and makeup artists.
Then came the revelation that had everyone gasping. When asked about certain phrases like "bury her" that appeared in conversations tied to Justin Baldoni's circle, Blake said she believed they might have meant literal harm. She recalled hearing remarks about 2 dead bodies and admitted it left her terrified for her safety. For a moment, the room went silent. Was Blake really suggesting she thought people wanted to physically harm her? Her lawyers quickly objected, but Blake pressed on. She said that as a mother, her instinct was to assume anything was possible. She confessed the comments haunted her, blurring the line between reputational damage and actual danger. And here's where it gets wild. While Blake believed the language was threatening, she also admitted she couldn't point to any direct evidence tying Wallace himself to those words. The statements came from other names, people in Baldoni's camp, not Wallace. By leaning on fear instead of fact, Blake added emotion to her case, but stripped away credibility. Instead of proving a smear campaign, she left many wondering if she had simply misinterpreted heated words as sinister threats. And her credibility issues didn't stop there. By the end of that exchange, the cracks in Blake's case were undeniable. She had painted herself as the target of a coordinated smear, but when pressed, she could not identify who authored what, when it happened, or where the proof could be found. Her entire narrative relied on vague impressions rather than concrete evidence. This handed Justin Baldoni's defense team exactly what they wanted: the argument that Blake was projecting her own PR tactics onto him. Baldoni claimed he was simply defending himself, and now, with Blake's testimony so flimsy, his version sounded more believable. The reason this happened will shock you. Legal experts suggested that Blake's approach might backfire entirely. Instead of making it to a jury trial, the judge could look at her deposition and decide there isn't enough evidence to continue. That means a dismissal, which would not only humiliate Blake, but also reinforce the idea that she manufactured the smear narrative. In Hollywood, where public perception is everything, Blake's reputation as a truth-teller was unraveling fast. But her problems weren't just in the courtroom, they were spreading into her personal life as well. As if the case wasn't already tangled enough, longtime publicist Leslie Sloan stepped in, demanding that her legal fees be covered. She pointed to a Daily Mail reporter's sworn statement as proof that Baldoni and his team had dragged her unfairly into the mess. But Sloan's argument hit a wall when the reporter's own credibility collapsed. His declarations were contradictory, changing from one filing to the next. Baldoni's camp struck back hard. They accused Sloan, Blake, and even Ryan Reynolds of pushing false claims to major outlets like the New York Times. According to their filings, stories were planted, messages were cherry-picked, and the narrative of misconduct was deliberately exaggerated. Things get even messier from here because this wasn't just about a lawsuit anymore, it was about who controlled the story in the press. Both sides accused the other of twisting headlines and shaping coverage to their advantage. Suddenly, the courtroom fight mirrored a media war, where winning public opinion seemed just as important as winning in front of a judge. And as the legal chaos escalated, another headline threatened to overshadow Blake entirely. While Blake was reposting birthday wishes from stylists and makeup artists on Instagram, Taylor Swift was announcing one of the biggest moments of her life: her engagement to Travis Kelce. Social media exploded with love and excitement, with A-list friends like Gigi Hadid and Cara Delevingne immediately chiming in to celebrate. But fans noticed who stayed silent: Blake. Not a like, not a comment, not even a subtle repost. For someone who once called Taylor a best friend, the silence was deafening. Gossip columns pounced on it, framing it as proof the friendship had ended for good. What came next surprised everyone. Some of Taylor's fans even suggested Blake had chosen to distance herself for fear of being dragged further into bad press. Others speculated it was pure jealousy, that Blake couldn't handle Taylor stealing the spotlight while she was drowning in courtroom drama. Whatever the reason, the contrast was glaring. One woman's life looked like a fairy tale, while the other's was spiraling into chaos. And if that wasn't enough, yet another media figure was about to step into the spotlight. Enter Perez Hilton, the notorious gossip blogger who has been covering Hollywood scandals for decades. Perez is preparing to appear in court, tied to the fallout of Blake's case. At issue is whether he and other online commentators should be treated as journalists under the law. Blake's team argues he shouldn't, because stripping that label would allow them to demand his sources. But critics immediately saw the contradiction. If Perez isn't a journalist, why chase his sources at all? He's built his career on breaking celebrity stories, and whether people like his style or not, he's been doing it longer than many traditional reporters. And it doesn't stop there. Legal analysts warn that this battle could set a precedent for how gossip outlets, blogs, and even YouTube creators are treated in future lawsuits. If Perez loses, the entire gossip industry could face tighter scrutiny. And that, ironically, could backfire on Blake too, because she's built her case on the very media narratives she's now questioning. With so many contradictions, all eyes shifted back to one man, the judge. Now the fate of Blake Lively's lawsuit hangs on the judge's decision. Will he decide her testimony lacked evidence and dismiss her claims against Jed Wallace once and for all? Or will he allow the case to limp toward trial, where a jury could pick apart every word of her deposition? Either way, the damage to Blake's reputation is already visible. Her deposition made her look forgetful, unprepared, and out of touch with her own case. Her silence on Taylor Swift's engagement only fueled the narrative that she's more isolated than ever. And her enemies, from Justin Baldoni to Leslie Sloan, are using every contradiction against her. The only certainty is this: the Hollywood machine is watching closely. If the judge dismisses her claims, Blake won't just lose a lawsuit, she'll lose credibility in an industry where perception is everything. If he allows it to continue, the trial could expose even more damaging details. For now, the story remains unfinished. But one thing is clear: Blake Lively's biggest battle isn't in court. It's for her reputation, and the clock is ticking fast.